Hi, Katie. We have The Whispering Statue. We are on Chapter 17, Captured. Startled by Mr. Basswood's question that she tell him why she had gone to Mr. De Geer's, Nancy did not reply at once.
"I want an answer,"
the shop owner demanded. Nancy was trying to look unconcerned. She smiled at her employer. "Someone in New York gave me his name," she said. "I thought I might save you some trouble and see if he had any pieces you could sell. He's very talented." Mr. Basswood looked up at the ceiling, then at the floor, as if trying to make up his mind whether or not she was telling the truth.
"Is that all there is to it?" he asked. "I also want to know why you left his studio in such a hurry."
Again Nancy smiled. "I saw a customer drive up, so my friends and I went next door to have dinner. We walked back to the barn later, but the place was locked." The art dealer stared at her, but she gave no evidence of nervousness or concern. The conversation was interrupted by loud banging on the office door. Nancy got up and went to open it. Bess was standing there. "Debbie," she said, "your customer is becoming impatient waiting for her package." Nancy looked at Mr. Basswood. His expression indicated anger and frustration. After a long pause, he said,
"Okay, I'll bring the package and the change myself. Debbie, you go back to the big room, and hereafter I want you to mind your own business."
Bess winked at Nancy, and the two girls walked through the hall into the main room of the shop. In a low voice, Bess said, "George and I are getting tired of hanging around here and dodging behind objects to avoid Mr. Basswood." "I'm sorry," Nancy replied. "Try to hang on a little longer, okay?" A few moments later, Mr. Basswood came into the room with the painting wrapped carefully and changed for the customer. Nancy was thinking, maybe Mr. Basswood will go off to have lunch, then I can do some more sleuthing around here. After the customer had left, Nancy reminded Mr. Basswood of the arrangement he had agreed to. The man's face turned red with anger, and he shouted, "You can't leave early! I need you here!" "But you promised—"
"In business," the shop owner said, "you have to put your personal affairs aside if you expect to be successful."
Nancy did not comment. She turned toward the girls and asked, "Would one of you go buy me a sandwich and bring it back to me?" Apparently Mr. Basswood did not approve, but he must have felt that Nancy was miffed over his scolding, because he gave her a half-hearted apology.
"I suppose you must eat," he said, "but I don't want any food brought in here. Run across the street to the sandwich shop. The reason I need you here this afternoon is because I plan to go shopping for more merchandise. Please stay."
George turned her back so the man could not see the broad grin that spread over her face. Mr. Basswood was actually playing right into Nancy's hands.
"I won't be returning after lunch," he told his young employee.
He pulled a key from his pocket and handed it to Nancy, saying,
"This is for the front door. You'll need it to let yourself in when you come back. And when you go at 4, put the key on the hall table."
"Very well," Nancy replied. "And I hope I'll make lots of sales this afternoon. Where will I wrap the things, and how do I make change for the customers?" Mr. Basswood mulled over this question for a few moments, then replied,
"You'll find wrapping paper and duct tape and tape in the back room. It's in a couple of drawers in a highboy back there, so I guess it's a chest of drawers. I'll put some money for change in a cash box in the top drawer."
The three girls said goodbye to him and went to the sandwich shop. As soon as they sat down, Nancy said, "Will you girls please do a little sleuthing for me this afternoon?" "What do you have in mind?" Bess asked.
"I want you to follow Mr. Basswood."
"Just the two of us?" Bess asked a bit fearfully. "Who knows what that man may be up to? I don't relish being kidnapped." Nancy was looking out the window. The next second she jumped from her chair and rushed out the door. Bess and George looked at each other, puzzled. Then they realized why Nancy had left them so abruptly. Through a window they could see Dick walking down the street. The young detective ran up to him and said, "You're just the person I was hoping to see. We need some help."
"What's up?"
he asked. Quickly, Nancy told him that Mr. Basswood had left the shop for a while. "I asked George and Bess to follow him when he drives off in his car, but Bess is nervous about it." Before Nancy could ask if he knew of a man who could join them, Dick said,
"I'll be glad to go along. Excuse me. A friend of mine is holding down my job this afternoon."
Nancy smiled. "Great! I have a pretty good idea where Mr. Basswood's going. If I'm right, you'll be back before dinner time." Dick asked where his car was. Nancy told him and took the keys from her purse. As she handed them over, he said,
"I'll get the car and leave it here in front of the restaurant. From inside we can see Mr. Basswood leave and take off after him."
Dick went for the car, and Nancy returned to the restaurant. She told the two girls about the arrangement, and Bess said she was relieved. A few minutes later, Dick joined the girls. He had not eaten lunch and ordered a roast beef sandwich. Although the four young people ate quickly to be ready to go at any moment, Mr. Basswood did not come out of the driveway alongside the shop for nearly an hour. "I'll pay the check," Nancy directed. "You three scoot." Dick and the two girls hurried outside, jumped into Dick's car, and were soon out of sight. Nancy was eager to get back to the bookshop to do some sleuthing. She would have nearly an hour before she opened the store to customers. Nancy paid the check and went across the street. As she was unlocking the door, a familiar voice called out,
"Hi, Debbie."
"Ned!" The young man stepped into the shop with her, saying,
"I thought we might go sailing."
"Sounds great," said Nancy, "but you forget I'm a working girl."
"Can't you get Basswood to let you take a little time off? After all, I've come a long way to see you."
"Sorry," Nancy replied. "Mr. Basswood has just gone off for the afternoon to buy merchandise. Bess and George went with Dick to trail him in his car." Ned's eyes lighted up.
"I'd say Debbie Lindbergh has arranged a perfect setup. And I'd like to bet you intend to make a thorough search of his shop before you open the door to customers."
"You're absolutely right," Nancy laughed. "And how about helping me?"
"Anything you say."
Nancy suggested that first they go to the basement where she had seen piles of Mrs. Merriam's books through the window. The door to the cellar stairway was unlocked. She snapped on the light and started down the stairs. The next moment Nancy gasped, "There's nothing here!"
"You mean Mr. Basswood moved everything out?"
Nancy said she was sure no one else had. "I wonder why he did that. Ned, let's search the room upstairs where the picture frames are." The highboy in the rear room had been pushed back into place, but Ned moved it aside. Nancy opened the door, and the couple gazed inside.
"Everything is gone from here, too,"
Ned exclaimed. Nancy did not comment for several seconds. Then she said, "Ned, this looks very suspicious. I think Mr. Basswood is probably planning to disappear." She glanced at her watch. It was nearly 2:00. "I must open the shop soon," she told him. "How about your doing some more investigating here and see if you can pick up a clue?"
"Okay."
Nancy went through the rear room toward the hall. When she reached it, she stood still and stared. In the big room, a burly man was scooping up objects as fast as he could and putting them into a lined, compartmented carton. Apparently, he had let himself in with a key. The man turned, and she got a good look at his face. He was the same one who had entered the front door of the Drew home and escaped from the art shop yesterday. "Stop that!" Nancy yelled at him. The intruder sprang toward her. Nancy started to run to the rear room, crying out, "Help! Ned! Help!" The burly man grabbed hold of Nancy, pinned the girl's arms back, and began to stuff the gag into her mouth. At that instant, Ned raced into the hall. The intruder saw him and let go of Nancy. He made a dash for the front door, but Ned leaped for the man's legs and brought him down in a smashing tackle. As he slowly rose to his feet, he said,
"I got a right to be here. I was sent to take away this stuff. Let go of me."
"Who told you to take it?" Ned demanded.
"None of your business."
Once more, the intruder made a beeline for the front door, but again Ned was too quick for him. He threw the man to the floor, knocking the wind out of him. Nancy told Ned about the previous intrusion. As he lay on the floor, Ned remarked, "You got away before, but you won't again. This time we're turning you over to the police." The man panicked.
No, don't do that. I'll talk."
Nancy and Ned looked at each other and waited for their prisoner to say something. He got up to his knees, then stood up without a word. Suddenly there was a loud knocking on the door. Could the caller be an accomplice? Ned held on to his captive, while Nancy cautiously opened the door a crack. "Ooh,